What up, virtual people? Welcome to episode 9 of Fandom Spotlite's VCR Redux. We take your favorite franchises out of the analog era and bring them back to 2021. I'm your host, pop culture punk Chris Stiles, joined as always by my co-host with the most, film professor Ian Klink.
How you doing, everybody?
And we have 2 radical guests on the show tonight. First up, our go-to guy is back for another round as Rick Barth and the line guitarist Mickey Torres is on the show.
What's up, everyone?
And also coming to you all the way from north of the border by way of the punk rock geek den, Matthew McKeever is here.
Hey, everybody.
All right, we are here to bring the iconic Axel Foley into the modern age. But before we do that, we need to talk about how this franchise came into our lives and what we love about it. So, Beverly Hills Cop. What, where, why, when, and how did it happen to you? We'll start with Matt, but that also goes for you watching at home. Hit us up in the chat with your Beverly Hills Cop first time. So Matt, Beverly Hills Cop, how did it hit you?
The first time I watched it, I'm from a very, very small town in northern Alberta, Bush League, Lumberjacks, you name it. It's exactly how you imagine it. And to get any movie, you had to reserve it. You were usually 13, 14, 15 people down. So by the time you saw Beverly Hills Cop 2 was coming, and so on down. And I remember watching it, and the very first thing that struck me, because I was just a kid, was I'm gonna get the name wrong. Bronson Pinchot was in it, or that was that one.
Yeah,
and just the way that Eddie Murphy talked to that actor, because I'm so used to him being the goofball on Perfect Strangers, and Axel goes, "Get the fuck out of here!" And he's like, "No, I won't get the fuck out of here." And in that accent, all in. That's my first memory of Beverly Hills Cop.
Oh man, so good. Serge is my man. I got plans for Serge.
Serge.
Same here.
Serge. When you say Serge, it sounds like a detergent. So, Mickey, Ian, how did Beverly Hills Cop come into your lives?
For me, I mean, obviously, we're gonna go down this road again. HBO. The first two,
Every
definitely HBO. The third one I did see in the theaters. That was 94. So like I remember I saw that in the theaters. But the first two, obviously HBO, and it was, I love them. And that's a piece of my my childhood there.
HBO seems like a great place to have discovered Beverly Hills Cop, which is like, fun, and it's a little bit,
Chris, it was
R-rated.
HBO is the McDonald's playland of all of our 80s childhood.
Yeah. Anything adult
90s,
related, anything that you wanted to see that was, adult related, you're like HBO. I mean, it was like the cable channel that you had. Everybody had HBO.
It was like the Super Size Me of your cinematic social life.
And it was cheap. At one point, it was cheap too. Like that's the one thing people don't get, because everybody thinks like, well, how does poor people have HBO? At one point, HBO was like an extra $3 when back in the day. So a lot of people did have HBO.
But they always gave you a promo though. They always gave it to you like, sign up for like the most cable and you get HBO for free for a year or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that much, but because that was the only option you had, really. There was no Netflix. There was no, it's either video store or HBO. Even pay-per-view wasn't that big at a certain point. So, everybody had it.
So how did Beverly Hills Cop happen to you through HBO?
No, so mine, I would say the second and third one. So Beverly Hills Cop II and Beverly Hills Cop III, those I got from HBO. But the first one, Mom and Dad used to do this thing, and I love this, right? They used to have you could rent a VCR, and because they also had another VCR at the churches, what they would do is rent movies on a Friday, and they would record the movie. So you could do that thing where you could play it in one, or record in the other. And so we would record, and one of the movies was Beverly Hills Cop. And if I'm not mistaken, it was followed by Revenge of the Nerds. I think that was the tape that had Revenge of the Nerds.
Nice.
So I would watch, Beverly Hills Cop, unedited, raw, as great as it could be, on that. But if I could just say this, I wish DVD companies would play movies with the VHS quality that we had on them. Because imagine you watch this movie, 24, 25 times on a VCR and a VHS tape, and it gets so warped and it looks fuzzy, and the images. I don't like the DVD version of Beverly Hills Cop, especially the opening with the cigarette truck, because it looks too clean. It looks too clean.
Really?
Yeah, I know, Chris. You're looking at me like I'm crazy, but I like it dirty. Okay, I like the
quote him. Quote him on that.
I do. I like that dirty quality VHS copy that I had. That's years dead, but it always looked better. It looked 80s. If that makes any sense.
I love VHS. I mean, I have fucking VHS literally tattooed on my chest where like rappers would get 187 or something cool. So I'm not going to bash VHS, but the thing I loved about VHS was like the democracy of it. Everybody had the same fucking technology, and you could take a tape and play it in every household in America because everyone
That's
had
so
a tape
true.
player. That was not like DVD got close to that, It was in like, 90% of households or something, but it never had that like 100% penetration that like VHS had or television or radio, VHS was just like the last one of those things that we ever got to experience. So it is magical to me, but I do not miss the bad quality. I mean, I want 8K. I want like as many Ks as I can. If that detail is in the 35 millimeter print, then I want it to be on my screen at home.
No, but there's something also beautiful. The soundtrack would come in and out sometimes. So you get the Pointer Sisters,
I can appreciate
everybody
that.
doing the neutron dance, neutron, it would come back and forth. It was great.
Well, I do like that with cassettes. Like I did like that. Like, there are some things that I listen to now that I remember listening to on cassette and how warped it got. So like I'm waiting for like a certain part, like my old Dokken doesn't sound the same unless I get a little bit of the solo, like kind of like going like yeah, and then back again or like that.
I'm just thinking about Airheads. Like, why didn't you bring it? I told you we should have brought a cassette. Like cassette deck knocks on the low end of the vocals, makes it sound like there's something standing on my nuts. Like But we do have some action in the chat. I've been been kind of neglecting it here. Alex Bonafante says, "What's up?" Thank you for tuning in, Alex. Good to see you there, bud. Bob Blanchard says, "Oi." Oi as well to you, sir. Thank you very much.
Bob, I'm sorry, Bob, you have a great name. Bob Blanchard. I love all of this.
He's a good dude. I actually know who that is.
Oh, okay. My gosh, yes. Nice.
Oh, thank you,
Bob. I love.
Bob's got the most epic sideburns on planet Earth. They're fantastic.
Yeah, Bob, I want you to post the picture of your sideburns right now. You hear me?
I don't know if we can do that in the chat, but I hope that
you find a way, Bob.
In an update, yeah.
If you can rock out those sideburns, you can find a way to get this to me. Do you understand me?
Hey,
make it so.
All I'm saying is Luke Perry can't be wrong when it comes to sideburns. That man showed us the way. Also in the chat, also coming from Punk Rock Geek Den, Craig Lucas is here. He says, "I used to watch the first with my dad over and over. That was my intro." Yeah, that intro was. Little fun fact on that intro too, Craig. The way they were able to do that was they put a steel I-beam behind the bumper of the truck. So that truck was literally bashing through all the shit, for real. They're just like, yeah, we could drive this through anything. There's a freaking steel I-beam behind the bumper. So that's little things like that's kind of why I want the high resolutions, because man, they put a steel I-beam in the bumper of a truck and drove it around Detroit. It's incredible. And interestingly, we were talking about this before, but with Matt coming from Canada, Detroit really is the closest neighbor, and I feel like as being as Americans, we're the bad neighbor who's like out there in a wife beater, like in a rusted out car, like on his lawn that's unmowed, garbage everywhere, yelling at kids and stuff. So do apologize about that. But
dandelions and a transmission out there.
Detroit. 80s Detroit on film was just awesome. It was like allowed to be like, oh my God, it's the worst place on earth. Like only RoboCop and Axel Foley could ever put it there.
80s Detroit is still Detroit today, Chris.
Not much has changed.
I had a good time almost getting killed in Detroit when I was there many years ago. So
I mean, and I'm not speaking from experience because I've never been to Detroit, but you know,
Me neither.
honestly,
That's a
of all my
I was just saying that's a story. I don't even want to know the story. Just leave it at that. Like that's just brilliant. That is all. Just leave it there.
So
Detroit's
also,
a great place to almost get killed.
Hey, of all my near-death experiences, that one was by far the coolest. We'll save that for another day, though. Also in the chat, our buddy James R. Young, also coming to you from Punk Rock Geek Den, says, "Of course, Ian likes it dirty." Thank you for having my back.
Okay, all right, yeah,
Ian move. Of course, Ian wants it the dirty VHS. You know, give me the Betamax version. It's a little bit better than VHS or the.
We actually had one of those.
Betamax.
Beta is better. I'm telling you,
30
Beta is better.
You know, you can get. Do you all know video discs?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You can get a video disc of Beverly Hills Cop. It was around the time, so you get that big old record of a video disc.
Can you also get a video CD? The short-lived. Now we're just talking about video formats, which I love. But for those of you who don't know, video CD.
Yeah, we're not talking about Beverly Hills Cop. We're talking about the transitions of
the technology.
Video CD was like your standard 5-inch, optical disc precursor to DVD and DivX, which was the worst format of all time. It was terrible quality, so it never took off. And of course, you had to still like flip discs, like Laserdisc or be 2 discs.
There's one guy in Ohio that has that thing, and he's holding strong, and he goes to everybody at the bar. It's like, it's gonna come back. It's vintage. It's coming back.
No, that guy lives in Detroit.
To bring it back around, though, to bring it full circle, I know that at one point Beverly Hills Cop, the first film, was available on 8mm. For those of you who don't remember, 8mm tapes in the 90s had a push before DVD also. There was like, all right, now we got VHS that's the size of cassettes, and it's basically the same quality, and it's like everyone's like, who cares? We're not changing over for the same shit but smaller,
8mm, get off my lawn.
Yeah, right. Again. But also in the chat, Alex Bonafante says part 2 is my favorite, and Tony Scott is my all-time favorite director. Ridley can pick a great script, but Tony can turn every ridiculous concept into a 90-minute music video. Rest in peace, Tony Scott.
I'll give you
Amen.
that.
I love Tony Scott. It's a perfect transition for us to start talking about the second film a little bit, because we're just glorifying in video formats briefly. So I'll finish in the chat. Also, Alex Bonafante also says, and rip Don Simpson, and Craig Lucas says Bob has epic everything. That's cool.
I love that.
Stoked to have you guys all tuning in.
Find a way, Bob. You find a way.
So, I mean, we didn't. There are certain things about the first film we haven't spoken of yet before we transition to the second film. Obviously, yeah, Bronson Pinchot, the soundtrack. I mean, it's got to be one of the top 10 film soundtracks of all time, right?
Oh, Faultmeyer.
The Axel F.
Harold
theme song.
Fucking Faltermeyer is a goddamn genius. What could be cooler than him? And it's so funny. I was like surprised that he was German. I just thought like he's just a cool, he's got a guy that's a funny sounding name, Harold Faltermeyer. I was like, oh my god, yeah, he's like fully German. He doesn't speak a lick of English, I don't think. But I've seen like videos of him tooling around in the studio, and it's amazing. He also did Running Man, which is an incredible
way better
score.
Better soundtrack. I will stand by this.
Oh, Running Man.
The Running Man soundtrack.
Yeah. I would say maybe better score, but maybe not better soundtrack.
No, score. Score. Like the score is for Running Man. I would actually pick over it. But there is a song in Beverly Hills Cop II. It's called it's the racetrack number that he does. And somebody made a collage of the musical cues I found on YouTube, and I found, and it is such a unique score that he does, the Harold Faltermeyer does, because it's not a theme, it's mood music that he does, but the way that he does it, the way that he splices it together, it does sound like it's almost a song. So if you can find that, it's actually really cool. It's the racetrack where they killed Dean Stockwell at the racetrack, and It's the music cues on that part is
Charles
such a
is short for Carlos. I solved the
Carlos!
alphabet crimes. Yeah.
I like
Yeah,
the
that's
music
right.
that's playing in the second one where like they're actually in the midst of doing the actual robbery with Brigitte Nielsen goes in there and everything like that. There's like
Bridget Nielsen.
I love we'll
Well,
talk about that, but that's why
in-
2 is my favorite.
An interesting kind of story as to how Bridget Nielsen became involved in the Beverly Hills Cop franchise, because even though the first film was written as a comedy, eventually it landed on Stallone's like lap, and it was going to be a Stallone movie at one point. And he like kind of rewrote the script, took a lot of the comedy out, made it a little more serious. He's, now he's Axel Cobretti instead of Axel Foley. And eventually they're like, look, this isn't the movie we wanted to make. I'm sorry. And they're like, but we'll, back you on whatever you want to do with this. We're just going to kind of take this stuff and put it into this other thing, we call it Cobra. And then we'll, go back to like the earlier version of Beverly Hills Cop. And we're going to try to get Eddie Murphy. And apparently Sly was very gracious because he got paid a bunch of money to like not take a film and to like rewrite the script, and but then he's so gracious that he puts his then wife Brigitte Nielsen in the sequel. Which and is a great line. How long take you to shave them legs anyways? Like, I suppose you're trying to be charming. No, actually, I was just offering my grooming services. But
man.
Eddie Murphy in the 80s was so just watching someone at the top of their game. It's like Jim Carrey in the mid 90s or Adam Sandler in the mid to late 90s when things are firing on all cylinders for them. And he, would just have a way of adding a line or adding a beat here or there. Like in the first one, he totally improv that, by the way, man, be careful of my car because all this shit happened to it last time I parked here. Which is incredible. Like, just one of the best jokes in the movie. And that's all just him kind of doing shit off the top of his head, which was still on full display in the second film. Like when Taggart and Rosewood show up, John Ashton and Judge Reinhold, Axel, get the hell out of the goddamn pool. Like, get your mad ass in this pool. Like, I love when you talk things like so good, like so natural,
hey,
so
Phil.
fucking good.
Hey, Phil.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
The Phil part is the best. They told me it wasn't you, but they said it's Phil. Like, that's one of the best. That's still one of my favorite like confrontations with like a bad guy scene of all time. It's in my top 10, easy.
The thing that I didn't appreciate it when I was younger. I appreciate it now, but like that guy is 22, 23 years old, being the lead in that movie. And it blows you away to think about that. And I heard him, Mark Moran, he did a podcast with Mark Moran a couple weeks back, and he was talking about all of that, just talking about like, Mark Moran's like, what'd you feel at this time? And Eddie Murphy's like, I was 19, dude. Like, I had no clue what I was doing. I get thrown into movies. I get thrown into this stuff. I did the best I could. But I also argue, I think that's what made Eddie's earlier stuff great, is because he's so raw, because he doesn't care. He doesn't know any better. By the time you get to like, which is not bad movies, but the time you get to, Boomerang and Vampire in Brooklyn, Eddie Murphy was an industry. Eddie Murphy was a thing. Eddie Murphy had to live up to Eddie Murphy Incorporated. And I think that always hinders somebody a little bit. So I agree with you. I think he's at the top of his game because he doesn't want to be on a baseball card. He just wants to throw the ball, like that. That's what I think he was doing at that time, which is great.
When he was a kid, he didn't have anything to maintain. He had nothing to lose. Just let it go. And he was absolutely bananas. Stand-up, Beverly Hills Cop. The guy, everything he touched in the decade of the 80s was solid gold. And then when he got comfortable and became his own industry, then that's when you get Pluto Nash and Dr. Dolittle and dumpster fire after dumpster fire.
One of the worst phrases I can hear out of like a filmmaker or an actor that I truly admire is when they say, I want to make movies for my kids now. I always go like, oh no, like, no, don't do that. Like, please don't do that. Robert Rodriguez, Eddie Murphy, and a million other people, Arnold Schwarzenegger, please don't do that,
Well, but Daddy Daycare wasn't bad.
Even a broken clock is right twice a day.
Oh, dude, I watch, my niece and I will watch Norbit every single time she comes to visit me. I mean, I will stand by Norbit. But I also, how dare you? But I think the thing that I love about Eddie Murphy is it is such, Matt, I agree with you. It's such a raw thing that he's doing. It's just, you're right. He had nothing to lose. And some of those moments are just great. I mean, one of the things I love is the opening of Beverly Hills Cop 1, which to me is one of the best 20 minutes of a movie. It really is. You introduce Axel Foley in the great way. You have this great background story where you kind of know Eddie's story, and that Axel's story with his friend shows up with the great I can't think of the actor's name.
Paul Reiser and the Gil who played the Serge. They're phenomenal, great. And he's a real cop too.
Yeah, but his friend Michael. I can't think of his name.
Right. Yeah, Mikey, yeah. Remember that time we stole the fucking car, man? Like, just him laughing is great. Yeah, he's like, you
know why I didn't rat on you? Because I love you. You're just like, oh my gosh, like that's a great opening scene. And when the guy from Breaking Bad shows up, which I always think, to me, he's always the guy in Beverly Hills Cop.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
I can't think of his name now, but that's the thing I love about. Yeah, that's what I love about the. Yeah, it's like you screwed up, don't do it. Yeah. Boom, bunches him, shoots him right in the head. I mean, it's just a great opening to 20 minutes to a movie. But I think that's what I loved about Beverly Hills Cop. The look of the movie, the cinematography, the way that it encapsulates that early 80s feel to me. And it's just a cool movie overall.
They also did a great job of like building a cast around him. Like there was a lot of like bit players or people that, like, I mean, you watch these movies now and you're like, oh, I forgot he was in that, and and what about that guy, and there's just, you're like, come on, Gilbert Gottfried. Oh, that's the best. Sydney.
There's incredible. There's something in this hand that makes you go, I don't know about these tickets in this hand.
$200. Ouch! I'm robbing you.
Bitch.
Oh my gosh, Gilbert Gottfried is a hero to all of us here, I think.
Oh yeah.
So there is a little bit of action in the chat before we get to the third film. Alex Bonafonte says part 2 is a fast-paced heist movie with a humorous overlay thanks to Murphy and Reinhold. I would agree. That makes sense. When I was a kid, part 1 and 2 sort of felt like a package deal to me. Like they felt like, oh yeah, of course there's a sequel, because it's like, this, and it felt the same. But as I get older, 2 is maybe my least favorite of them all.
Interesting.
Not to say that 3 is not without its problems, but I feel like the things that do work in 3 work very well. And I don't know, there's a lot, like 2 is still a good movie. It's still a great movie even. It's a lot of fun, and Eddie Murphy carries it. He's just at the top of his game, and like that's pretty much all you need. But it didn't have like quite all the fun of the first film, and like not quite as much of the supporting cast. There was no Serge, there was no Janet, there was no
but you had Gilbert Gottfried.
Stephen Burkhoff. Stephen Burkhoff was a better villain in the first one than the villain in the second one. Brigitte was great. And the shitty mayor was great and stuff, but or the shitty, whatever police commissioner.
There's no line delivered by a villain better than when he goes, "Careful, boy, you might hit me." Like, he's just so cool. What I love that villain, because he taught me, as a director, as you're watching movies, villains don't have to yell.
No.
It's such a cooler approach when a villain's just like, "Mr. Foley, you came back here again. I don't understand." He's just questioning in such a small teacher voice that you're like, oh my God. Like,
and if you're gonna have a villain yell, you pretty much have to have Dennis Hopper. Otherwise it's not gonna be as good. I'm sorry. Dennis Hopper's just the best. The yelling of any kind, happy, sad, mad, whatever. It's gotta be Hopper. Also,
but that means we got to talk about Beverly Hills Cop. I.
Well, we're about to get there.
Okay, all right.
But I do want to say again in the chat, A-Dub, our good friend Anthony Ramirez, maker of many, many fine mashups. He says 48 hours, there's a new sheriff in town. Absolutely classic line. Oh yeah. New sheriff in town. And his name's Reggie Hammond. But so goddamn good. I love.
I always like the like, look, man, I ain't falling for no banana in my tailpipe.
Ah, and shout out to Damon
Wayne.
Wayans. Damon Wayans having a cameo.
Why does he do that? That is pure effing genius when he does that. Here you go. Take these. Yeah. It's like it makes no sense why an actor would make that decision in the movie. But
he did the same thing on SNL and it got him fired. He refused to play. He's like, no, I'm gonna play it flamboyantly gay. And like, if you do it on air, we're gonna fire you. And he's like, well, I'm doing it.
Love it.
But I love because in Living Color, oh my God, my heart. I love that show so much.
Oh yeah.
Hope we don't play that.
Really
So much. But okay, so Beverly Hills Cop 3 rolls around. And like you said, by this point in time, Eddie Murphy is an absolute institution. He's just had hit after hit after hit after hit after hit. His only flop is Best Defense, and that really stunk on Dudley Moore a lot more than it stunk on Eddie Murphy. So I think he got paid like $15 million to do Beverly Hills Cop I, as Ian would say. Which
wow.
At the time, that's probably more than they spent on the first movie. The first movie was probably like maybe a $15-20 million film or something,
But they were making like triple what they cost.
Well, yes, until I think the third one, which is
the third one did, yeah.
But the third one we've had, like 30 years almost in between that and another one.
Well, the third one, if you take a look, I mean, like that's 94. That's when Eddie started to dip a little bit in his picture choices. But
yeah,
I mean,
I guess. I mean, I like Boomerang and the Distinguished
I
Gentleman.
love Boomerang. Oh wait, I love those movies. Don't get me wrong, but they weren't hits. Like
they weren't mega hits, but they definitely were not flops or failures.
No. But it started to go down.
Yeah, I guess. But I think that's But I think to be fair, I think that's the case for a lot of actors that were big in the 80s when the 90s happened, the lean years they all refer to it as, because I think the scripts weren't as good. I just think that the 80s was peak power of creativity and original script writing and movies getting greenlit that you'd never seen before. And the 90s was kind of like, well, I don't know, we're gonna, be a little more pander to this or pander to that, or and the things just, I don't know, things were not as genuine.
It was definitely lighter. And I would argue, the 90s did tend to be a little bit more family oriented, a little bit more, we have to water it down just a little bit.
Yeah, we're not doing R-rated movies that for little kids anymore, which, the world needs them. I'm sorry.
I think that comes down to investors as well. The producers and people that are actually investing in the movies. In the 80s, they were willing to just go willy-nilly. I mean, it's like, we joke about it all the time, but it's like, hey, do a bump and let's go. And in the 90s, they were like, wait a second. We want all the cash that we can get, but we're not willing to put out a lot. So we want to make sure that we got to get a hit, right off the bat. So let's put down the coke and let's think about this.
And I think part of it is the choice of director. I love John Landis. I think John Landis. Yeah. I think John Landis in and itself did a great job on Beverly Hills Cop I. But I think that the most interesting thing about the series is each of the directors have been a unique choice. Martin Brest of the first movie, scored with Going in Style, and all of a sudden he comes in with this totally different approach to making the movie. That the humor was very subversive in itself, and then you get Tony Scott who's coming in making it like Top Gun 2. But just with Eddie Murphy with a gun. And then you have John Landis, who's making pretty much a John Landis comedy, which is very soft lighting. It's very, it's not widescreen camera work. It's very matted. He takes more of the comedy approach. And I don't know if that's what we want. We want an action movie that's funny, not a funny movie that has some action. If that makes any sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. I think Landis had one shortcoming on the third film. It would be the action stuff, which is funny that I think the way he writes it, because everyone always has to kind of like try and put the stench of a misfire on someone else. I've seen Landis in writing say like, oh, well, Eddie wanted to be like Denzel and Will Smith when he was making that. So I knew the script wasn't funny, but I thought Eddie would make it funny with his improv like he always does. And like he just didn't want to do that stuff this time. He wanted to be taken a little bit more seriously. He wanted to be a little bit more, you know, of a Harrison Ford type of just leading man, not cracking jokes anymore. And he's like, I think the movie suffered for that. He's like, I read the script of the first Beverly Hills Cop. It wasn't funny, but Eddie made it funny. He's like, I just figured that would happen here. But yeah, still the action, you're right. Obviously, Tony Scott and Martin Brest are both far more capable at directing large scale action scenes. And I thought Tony Scott, but you're right. Top Gun 2. I'm sorry.
I thought there was less humor in the third one. To be honest, like there wasn't a lot of humor in it. And you know, if Landis is saying that, the onus on being on Eddie, I mean, like, I really feel like if it's not in the script, I mean, like, you know, Eddie can ad lib, but again, I could understand. I mean, Eddie at that point was probably getting a little bit tired of doing the heavy lifting, so to speak. Give me something to work with, and you know, I'll bring some out, or whatever the case may be. And maybe he was looking for the direction, and Landis was just thinking, oh, well, just be funny. And that was the direction.
Yeah. Well, that's what it looks like, because even in those movies that I don't like of Eddie Murphy's, if you watch any of the gag reels, he's going off the whole time. Yeah. So I don't think he stopped doing it just for Beverly Hills Cop 3. Out of all those movies, that's just the one he decides to go straight. That seems off.
Yeah, that would be kind of a strange decision, right? I mean, that all makes sense. And maybe it's one of those things where he became less inspired. Maybe it was because of personal things between him and John Landis, you know, because they'd worked together a bunch of times before, and that can always get complicated. Maybe it was they saw the movie, he could tell the movie wasn't going that well, it wasn't turning out that great, so he sort of maybe checked out a little bit. Could have been a multitude of things, but as a kid I really did appreciate the third film, and I was upset that I didn't see it in theaters, that I had to wait until video to see it.
I mean, I saw it in theaters. I mean, I'm not going to say that I don't love 3. I do love 3.
The problem for me with 3 is, like, Ian always says he wants Batman in his Batman films. I want Beverly Hills in a movie with Beverly Hills in the title. So I don't want it to be, you know, I love that it takes place in an amusement park and that's fun, but there's nothing uniquely Beverly Hills about that place at all. Like every state has an amusement park, which is why that works in a different type of sense, but not in the Beverly Hills Cop sense. But it was still a lot of fun.
Go back to
Alice DeWalt was a great villain, you know?
Yeah. To go back to another episode that we talked about, like, you know, Wonder World just seemed like it was Wally World.
Well, yeah. Well, speaking of Wonder World, in the chat, again, our buddy Anthony Ramirez says Beverly Hills Cop 3 was shot at my local amusement park. I know he lives on the West Coast. Great America, I think is what he says.
Oh, okay.
Which has a notorious track record for deaths on the rides. That is fascinating and scary.
Like Action Park?
Yeah, well, Action Park had quite a few too. Yeah, I don't know if anything could compete with Action Park in New Jersey. No. But also in the chat, Alex Bonafante says part 3 is the weakest. It has a basic cable aesthetic from beginning to end. That's kind of what you're saying, Ian, with the soft lighting. And he says, I blame John Landis. The story is uninteresting. The villain reveal is anticlimactic, and Landis was out of his element. Man, words well spoken. I endorse all that. Good
job. Landis, you're out of your element, dude.
Beat it.
Well, you know,
I don't think there was like you said, like a villain reveal. There wasn't really a villain reveal. You knew who the villain was from like scene 1, basically. And then it was.
But that's a reveal. You know what he's saying is, like, anytime you introduce a character in a film, that's a reveal. Essentially, you're showing who this guy is, and you're supposed to do it in like one shot. You know?
I think it was actually more of a surprise of the John Saxton, the late great John Saxton character.
I love John Saxon. He can do no wrong, and this movie succeeds because of him, and also because of the return of Serge and the Annihilator 2000.
Rockwell.
I love that.
And then
this is the floor model.
I made you one with the espresso with the lemon twist. It's the last one I ever made. Like, why? Because my boss was into the bad things, as you know. You shot him. Like, so I mean, that dude is just firing on, like, his fucking shit never stops. I feel like you could plug
Yeah.
Bronson Pinchot into a movie today, or Pinchot, however you say his name, and he could do Balky, he could do Serge as well as ever, as he ever could.
Okay, tell me any of you have seen The Langoliers, Stephen King, The Langoliers, the TV.
Oh yeah, one of my faves.
Long time ago.
Genius in that movie. I don't care what anybody says. What he does in that movie as the villain it's hammy. It's over the top, but it is A+ stuff right there. That I love him in that. I'll watch it just to watch him do his stuff in that.
I almost feel like his lines were I feel like his lines were ad lib. Like I almost feel like his lines were total ad libs.
Oh, Beverly Hills Cop.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
totally.
Yeah.
I could totally see that for sure. Or even if they're as it is on the page, that shit's not funny, but like even just as a little kid, it's just pure comedy gold. Every time that man speaks, you're just dying, and that's your favorite. That's always your favorite scene, whatever scene has him.
So can I? No,
sorry.
go ahead. No, I was just gonna say, can I do a controversial thing?
Sure.
Do we consider Metro Beverly Hills Cop Ivy?
Oh,
good
I almost forgot about it.
Why would we?
Metro.
Well, but that's the thing. The interesting part about Metro is it's a Beverly Hills Cop movie without the humor. It's sort of funny, but it's like Eddie Murphy wanted to make an action cop movie. And I remember watching it going like, oh, is this Beverly Hills Cop? Is this, oh wait, no, it's not. Oh, why didn't they just make this Beverly Hills?
I think Cobra is more of a Beverly Hills Cop movie in my heart than Metro is. It's like almost just like it's Vampire in Brooklyn, Beverly Hills Cop movie. Like, no, it's not. Like, it's a great.
Well, but it's a cop movie. That's what I'm saying. He's kind
similar.
of an Axel Foley character.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see where you would think that, because
in my mind,
got that
Metro,
same vibe.
Not to disrespect Metro, it's an okay movie, I guess. But compared to Beverly Hills Cop 3 even, or 2, or whatever your least favorite one is, not even a pimple on the ass of those movies. They're incredible. And I love 48 Hours. But to me, 48 Hours can't even compete with Beverly Hills Cop. I mean, this is like, Beverly Hills Cop is absolute gold. It's just an absolute fun time. And we will get to what we would do with this franchise in just a moment when I touch up on the chat here, when I'm done with that. So where did I leave off? Okay, so Craig Lucas, also from Punk Rock Geek Den, says, I think if you're trying for humor, it just becomes comedy. Eddie could naturally, that makes sense. You try for humor comes for comedy. Okay. Eddie could naturally make improv work for not so great scenes, and it became a dependent feature of the character. I guess that makes sense too. Yeah. And when Eddie, it continued here in multiple things. And when Eddie is expected to be funny, it just doesn't work, honestly. That's weird. I guess, you're saying it needs the surprise nature for him to be funny.
He doesn't want to be forced. Like he doesn't, sense. he can't force the comedy. It's got to come natural, I guess.
And Alex Bonafante also says, yep, villain reveal in part 3 was obvious. Yeah, it was just like, oh, here's a guy. Okay. That's his face. That's what all right, whatever. It was very just ho-hum.
You definitely didn't see any of the chop shop guys that were dancing along to like Diana Ross being the main villain.
Those guys are one of the fucking more entertaining parts of the beginning stages of the film. And obviously his boss getting shot is like, you love that dude. You're gonna miss him being like, the man just got done chewing out my ass. You can see I don't have any left. His lines were so good, you totally believed them. But okay, so
this is not my locker.
Get Paul Reiser back. Yes. All right.
Yeah.
It's time. What do we do? Someone gives you the keys and a stack of money and says, write me a new Beverly Hills Cop. What do you guys want to do? Do you want to write a show? Do you want to write another movie? Do you want to reboot it?
No.
Do you want
No. Stop with the shows. Stop with the shows. We don't
Stop with the shows.
That's number one. But like I want a buddy cop movie with Serge and Eddie. I want Serge and Axel. I want, because now Serge is doing the guns now and everything else like that. Let's say like, he sold to a dealer or something like that, and this guy was a bad dude, and now Serge's guns are like all over the place, and somehow, some way, maybe Judge Reinhold's character gets killed, and now here's brings Eddie back to the fold to like, avenge, like, I got to find out, what happened and this and that, or maybe even Taggart, whatever the case may be. Somebody gets killed that brings them back in. And then you got the buddy cop with Serge.
I don't even want Bogomil to get killed, Ronnie Cox's character. So I'm with you on that, except for them getting killed. Get them kidnapped or something.
Well, I'll give you the kidnap, but you got to bring Eddie back somehow.
But you got to get the whole gang back together. The magic is like the friendship between those guys. And when they lost Taggart, that was probably the worst thing for the third film. I don't know what else he was doing around that time, or if he chose something else, if it was a scheduling thing. But I just can't help but feel like that is like so lazily glossed over. Like Taggart retired. Just like, oh, okay, we just threw that out like it was nothing.
And they tried to cover it up with Hector Elizondo, who's a great actor, and
I
everything
love
like that.
Hector Elizondo,
but they never,
he is a good actor,
they never did anything. Like they made it seem like for a while. I mean, if you watch that movie for a while, you kind of thought that maybe he was a part of the whole thing too.
Yeah.
Like I thought, like he was in cahoots too.
Yeah, you almost weren't sure. Yeah, the first time you watch it. I know what you mean, which is a weird thing. By the end of Cop 1, you're like, all right, Ronnie Cox, John Ashton, and Judge Reinhold are the shit. I love those guys. They're good dudes. They admitted that they were wrong, and now they're working with Eddie Murphy, and this is great.
Is this the man who wrecked the buffet?
Again, just incredible. Only Eddie Murphy could do that, like Johnny Wishbone, that shit, like just think of me and I appear. Johnny Wishbone. Or the explosive sound-seeking projectiles. Like my buddy got killed doing some shit just like this. All they found was $20 and a pair of Adidas.
I will say this. I agree with Mickey though. No doing this as a TV show. I'm getting tired of that too. Like we get it. TV is the way you want to have, spread it out over 8 nights. It's great. First off, it's a mini series. Don't call this TV anymore. It's you're basically doing a mini series.
It's not TV. It's HBO.
That's right. But you cannot do it without Eddie Murphy. There's no reason to do it. Like I know a few years ago they were talking about doing this TV show with his son, and Eddie Murphy was gonna have like some role as like he comes in and beats dad, and stuff like that. And it's like, no, I want Axel Foley. Like that's why I pay money to go see Beverly Hills Cop. I don't go to see Bow Wow as Eddie Murphy's son. Like I don't see that. I don't want that. I want
great casting choice. Great casting choice.
He was in what was it, the Big Mama's House 3 or whatever. It was like now it's Bow Wow as his son or something. But like
while you're talking, it actually just hit me what I think would be a cool entry point. I think this jives with what Mickey was saying, right? I hate to retcon shit, and you told me in the third film that Taggart's retired, so Taggart's retired, but nothing in there says he couldn't have gone into business for himself in his retirement, open up a private security company or something like that, and then gotten onto some shit, and then he calls Axel for help, and Rosewood and the whole fucking gang gets back together, and there's Serge, and like, yes, you're already off and running. All you need is a cool villain, fun adventure, some cool locations, a couple action scenes, and some good funny lines in the script, and then expectations for Eddie to elevate that material.
Well, I'm going to take your idea, and like you mentioned earlier, that this really isn't a Beverly Hills Beverly Hills Cop isn't really a Beverly Hills Cop movie. So just stop it. It's gold. It's awesome on its own. Taggart comes out of retirement, starts this independent contracting company, and instead of the Expendables, you have an 80s buddy cop ensemble cast. You get neurotic Tom Hanks, Jim Belushi, Eddie Murphy, Judge Reinhold, all of them, all those tacky B class actors out of the 80s, and they get back together for one more ride.
Take my money and my heart. That's incredible.
Back to the beach. Back to the beach. The cop, the cop rock version.
Well, what's interesting. one like there I could do spin-offs of Beverly Hills Cop for days, but one that I've always wanted, and I we'll have to go to the chat soon because it's going a little bit right now, but one thing I always thought was interesting was that Axel Foley and RoboCop are essentially from the same place, and in my mind all movies are connected. So like they're the dudes that keep Detroit clean, and like damn, the buddy cop movie I've always needed is right there, just Detroit Hills Cops.
And then Eminem comes too, because he's from 5 Mile. So 8 Mile, rather. 8 Mile.
If Clarence Boddicker's there, then Tigers are playing.
Chris, Detroit Rock City. Axel Foley, RoboCop, all the there you go, right there. There's a mashup right there.
That's what I'm talking about. Beverly Hills RoboCop.
I would pay money to see Eddie Murphy and Eminem do a scene together. Like that's it.
Here's
I'm
the
good.
thing. You've got Eddie Murphy and you've got Alex Murphy. That's Eminem enough right there. That's Murphy and Murphy. Murphy and great Murphys of all time. No offense to the Dropkicks. I know you guys are watching. But there is some action in the chat. So I went a little bit further than okay. Also in the chat, Alex Bonafonte, I don't consider for Metro to be part 4, but replacing Taggart with Michael Rappaport would be interesting. I think he means we're doing it the other way around, replacing Michael Rappaport with Taggart. That would be, which would make it more interesting and closer to Beverly Hills Cop. Also, Craig Lucas from Punk Rock Geek Den says, I would totally go with the buddy cop idea. That's kind words for you, Mickey. That's good. Alex Bonafonte says part 4 needs the spiritual protege of Tony Scott, the director with experience working with Jerry Bruckheimer for The Rock, Michael Bay. Bayhem all the way. Oh man.
Bayhem. I don't know. That's a hashtag that. I love that.
I think stay away, Bay.
You don't want Michael Bay.
Yeah, you don't want Michael Bay. Bay is not my Bay. So, and our good friends from Retro Fiend Radio are tuned in. They are the maker of some of the finest Canon Films documentaries you will find on YouTube. Definitely check them out. They, and just went off the screen. We just must have had a couple chats come through. Oh, there it is. Sorry. Retro Fiend Radio says Beverly Hills Cop, Rosewood, and Taggart have to come out of retirement and go to Detroit to help Foley, who's got trouble with the local crime syndicate. Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Oh my God.
Going to Detroit.
That's where Serge is now. He's a mafia boss. How great would that scene be? You go to a spaghetti, restaurant and everything like that.
Be a good guy, mob boss, though.
That's okay. He's the one that helps him out. He's like, look at this. I have everything.
I have my people on the streets. They are checking. They're opening, knocking down doors for you.
You just get Eddie Murphy. Get the F out of here. I say I live. I'm a boss now.
And I just figured out who the villain is. Because you need a villain that's going to be better than even Ellis DeWald. No one's going to top Steven Berkoff. But if we're going even Steven, the man we need is Steven Seagal. And the side plot is under Serge. Under Serge.
Sick, man.
Seagal's the villain. Who doesn't hate Seagal?
I'm done.
That's the poster. That's another poster, though. The Under Serge is another poster.
Serge. Oh, that's why I did that one. That one a while ago.
Yeah.
I'm just stroking my own.
It's under siege or go home, Chris. All right, like that's it.
Under Serge.
Under Serge.
So also in the chat, Craig Lucas from Punk Rock Geek Den says, and yeah, sorry, I get confusing, but you nailed where my comment was going. Okay, cool. And Alex Bonafonte says, and Reinhold Pinchot and everyone else, plus Harold Faltermeyer for the score. Yes, the score from 3 was not as good. It was a little too sterilized.
I was upset. See, but I was upset at like Cop Out. Like I don't think anything compared to what he did then. There's just something about that time period,
What I bet you 10 to 1 happened with Cop Out was I guarantee you Kevin Smith temped the movie with classic Faltermeyer cues, and then he was painted into a corner. And people should never use temp score when they're cutting their movies together. It's one of the greatest, like that CGI and retconning are what's ruining Hollywood. Also, in the chat, James R. Young says, yes, Beverly Hills RoboCop. All right, that's cool.
Beverly Hills RoboCop.
Also, James is also coming at you from the Punk Rock Geek Den. Be sure to check them out on YouTube. They have an awesome show. But, so is there anything else? I mean, do you guys want to see Ronnie Cox come back, Bogomil, or maybe somehow tie him in? His daughter was part of 2. I don't think we should just throw her away. Or Janet. I'd love to see Janet come back.
Yeah,
No, go ahead.
I mean, I guess if you want, I mean, she could be like, obviously, like, I mean, like, I hate to say that, it breaks down to just the core, but it really does. I mean, like it's been so long since we've gotten a Beverly Hills Cop, and a good one at that, that you really need that kind of nostalgic kind of thing to bring it back in, and to kind of like, feel the love there. So I mean, like, those characters, while some of us like hardcores would be like, oh yeah, it's blah blah blah, you really just want, the basic four people there.
Yeah, but let me present this though. All right, so a couple things. One is I love Lethal Weapon 4, right? But Lethal Weapon 4 is the greatest hits album, right? You love it, and they give you every song that you want to hear on that thing, but there's nothing new for you to go, that's interesting. It's a great movie, right? The greatest hits, it's always a great album, right? Because you love the music, but it does. And I worry that they would do a greatest hits for Beverly Hills. And my reason for that is that's what I felt with Coming to America.
Yeah.
It's like a fan wrote that script and said, I want to give you everything that I loved about this movie when I was a kid. And somehow it got greenlit. There was no, just there was not that one little hit in there that I went like, oh, that's weird. Oh, that's a unique song. Like even on the bad album that you don't like, there's always that one song that you're still curious about. And I felt that with Coming to America, I didn't get anything curious. I literally got a fans made Coming to America, a sequel. And I worried that would happen with Beverly Hills Cop, because I would want Eddie Murphy doing something that lives up to the first one, that's different, that has that action to it, that, like I said, is an action movie with some great comedy. And I just feel it would be more like Beverly Hills Cop I think I would get more of just a comedy movie that has a few action scenes. Again, also the fact, Eddie Murphy's pushing 60 something, or close to. I mean, he's not going to be the action star that we know, or at least knew when he was 24. So I don't know. I honestly don't know if I want the greatest hits album for this one. And I think you're right, Mickey, because it's been so long.
I don't want them to replay the same beats like they do in movies. Like, oh, now they're at a strip club together. Like, oh, now he's getting thrown through a window. Like, oh, now he's doing a funny character to get in this. I mean, that one probably should bring back, but what I mean? Like, it's like Austin Powers. Like, by the time you get to the third movie and they're doing like the pee joke again, or the nipple joke again, or the fat bastard joke again, it's like, oh my god, like this is just not these are just the jokes that weren't good enough when you made two other movies already that you had left over. And like, we're over it. Even if they were the funniest ones yet, we're just over it now. It's not funny. Like, things change over time.
Yeah, nostalgia's hard, man. I mean, like Star Wars, I mean, my gosh, you can't make any Star Wars fan ever happy about anything, mainly because it's a nostalgia thing. It'll never live up to what they loved. And so I even think with an Eddie Murphy Beverly Hills Cop 4, we'll probably just be jerks about it and go, eh.
I gotta say though, my favorite cameo ever is in Beverly Hills Cop 3, when Eddie Murphy cuts George Lucas off on like the fucking carousel ride.
Yeah.
George Lucas is good, dressed in the dorkiest like turtleneck under a crew neck sweatshirt.
That's right.
Eddie Murphy cuts off, like, hey, Landis loves doing director cameos. That scene,
throughout the whole movie.
And the funniest part actually of Beverly Hills Cop 3 for me, not to backpedal too much, but when they all think that he shot Uncle Dave. They're all the directors are in the bar and they all turn around. Like, and there's like, somebody shot Uncle Dave. Yeah, some fool named Axel Foley. That's, for some reason, that just cracks me up.
Got, but if they do a fourth one, he's got to be captain.
Yeah.
At this point, he has to be captain.
Oh yeah.
Well, I'm trying to, I think a lot about like, where would Axel Foley logistically be 30 years later too, and what would his life be like? Is he a captain in Detroit? Is You know, did he ever move to Beverly Hills Cop? Is he planning on retiring there? Like, is he retired as a cop? Because it's been 30 years, you know. He could definitely just take his pension and be like, all right, cool. So maybe he joins Taggart's private security force. And maybe Rosewood is still the JGI DDOSIOC.
Or maybe he's a captain. Maybe Rosewood's a captain.
What is it?
And then
it's DDI JSIOC, Deputy Director of Interdepartmental Jurisdictional Systems Departments and Command, or something.
Why do you remember that, Chris? Good Lord.
Because it was the fucking funniest thing ever to me, watching Judge Reinhold with such earnest, like, sincerity. Be like, I'm DDI JSIOC. Like,
I've never hated you more than this moment right now. For you remembering that shit.
But it was probably, you know, last week it was, you know, much hate too because of the Hawaiian shirt. So it's
well, you know, someone's got to keep Ian mad so the show has some conflict and something interesting happens.
You came out of nowhere with that, and you should be ashamed of yourself.
Oh no, this is like, again, this is what HBO was good for. Like, anytime I didn't have to decide what to go, all right, Beverly Cop 3's on again. Fuck it, I'll watch that.
It was true. We all did that too.
We all did that. Fuck it.
It's like,
I'm
gonna
that's why, like, I've seen 2 about 1,000,001 times because it was like that's like the most, like, they ran 2 all the time on HBO.
They did. Yeah.
I think of all of them, they ran 2 like the most.
Probably. And to be fair, Eddie Murphy's response to Judge Reinhold when he gives him that title is great. The JG Jojo C. What's that? Like. So good. We do have a little bit more going in the chat. A little bit more than I thought. Alex Bonafonte says, whoops, I thought John Ashton Taggart was dead. My bad. No, he's alive and well, and we need him in the 3rd film. Alex Bonafonte also agreed. That was fast. Don't just play the hits. That's why a new captivating villain subplot is so important. I agree, which is a good point. I mean, you guys have already said mafia, which I think is a good way to go. Because I believe, there could be some West Coast mafia for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And you know, we've seen money laundering
because there's no mafia in Detroit. No.
But I would love it if they reversed it and they put, like, you know, like Taggart and Rosewood would come to Detroit.
It would be, I think you can get
that's
the best of both
good.
worlds.
I like that, Mickey.
I think the movie can start in Beverly Hills Cop. They go to Detroit, and then maybe like the final 3rd act is in Beverly Hills Cop, in Beverly Hills somewhere. So you get it all.
Yeah, crocodile eye this shit, man. Like, reverse it.
Reverse
now
it.
That's a plot.
Reverse.
That's it.
Yeah,
that's it.
Exactly. A little motion in the back.
We got Missy Elliott on the 1s and 2s over here.
Yeah.
And our friend Anthony Ramirez also says that carousel ride was giant bird cages. That's right. That's what it was. They tore it down. Oh, yeah. Great America people only use it to blaze up and make out. Oh, yes. I so did that. It's funny. The one, I'm from Chicago, and mine was called Great America too. Six Flags Great America. Maybe that's the one he's talking about. But at any rate, shout us out if that is. In Gurnee, Illinois, I think it is. And also Alex Bonafonte also says there's little room for recouping protagonists to evolve. The compelling sequel villains create the new stakes. I agree there as well. And you know something? For sake of tying it all together, I would not be the least bit mad at seeing Hector Elizondo in this movie as well. As long as he gets Taggart too. If you know. Yeah, give me that. He doesn't have to be a huge role. He could be fucking the chief or something by now. Or he said he was going to retire, so I assume that he would be retired by now. But he could have run for fucking mayor or something. You know, just
as long as it's filmed like an action movie. Yeah, I think that's the key. That's the key to it. I again love John Landis, great director. I just think that Beverly Hills Cop, I was just made not as an action movie. It was made as a comedy movie, and it I honestly believe that's what made it not work. I think the plot works. The plot actually is kind of interesting. I think it would have been better as Disneyland, let's be honest. But you know, I think it didn't look that way, and that's where we ran into kind of as fans kind of going.
And it fails at both. It fails as a comedy movie, and it fails as an action movie.
Well, and again, I'm not gonna, this is a long stretch, believe me, but Porky's, right? Porky's Revenge was not filmed the same way that the first two was, and you watch it, it looks cheaper. It's not as well lit. It makes you not like it, and it's a Porky's movie. Okay, so the plot's the same in all of them, but it doesn't.
The bar is low.
The bar is low, right? And I think that tends to happen. Friday the 13th Part 3. A lot of these, like, it's so interesting. A lot of the sequels are filmed differently. American Wedding was filmed differently. It doesn't look like the first two movies, so it has this. They're
probably on digital by the time you get to American Reunion.
Yeah. So American Reunion looks like the first few movies, but there's just that one in the middle that just looks weird.
It's also part of it is like going with the times and stuff like that. Like at one point 35 was the standard, then Super 35 became the standard for a certain type of movies, and then digital came in. Times you can just look at the 80s and the 90s where they were both shooting movies on Super 35. The Super 35 in the 90s looks 10 times more crystal clear and detailed and less grainy than the stuff they had in the 80s, which looks 100 times better than the stuff they had in the 70s. It's just we're constantly changing where our standards and priorities are in film imaging. But are there any other hot takes? Anything that you need to see besides, Beverly Hills? Do we need to see like Beverly Hills Carrot Top or something crazy with this franchise? I think that seems like a no.
I think like we said, as long as it's not a greatest hits movie, that's the important part.
Yeah.
If Hollywood's listening, don't greatest hits it, right? Like you were saying, have Serge as the buddy cop. Serge should be in there for a good cameo, but don't do it. Don't do it too long. Don't ruin the formula.
The Serge could be integral to the thing, and I wouldn't be opposed to Lethal Weapon 4 to style ending where they don't know. You guys friends? No, we're family.
That's great. Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine.
But so I guess that kind of wraps it up for our takes on Beverly Hills Cop. And if you are watching Hollywood, you should hire the four of us now, because at this point in time, we're pretty cheap. You never know when we're going to become really expensive. But in the meantime, Matt, do you have anything coming up on the Geek Den you want to let the people at home watching know about? Any cool episodes coming up, or
you bet next recently? This last Tuesday, we talked to does Pajama Jams on YouTube, where he takes his ukulele around the United States and he plays a song at a historical spot somewhere in his travels. So in front of, I think he's going to go do a song in front of the Comedy Store. He did one. You put me on the spot and I forgot all the things he told me on Tuesday. But
I watched. I mean, I was there. What did he
say?
Yeah,
you were there.
He did Johnny B. He's going to do Johnny B. Good in front of Doc Brown's house.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Yeah, really cool. Yeah, that's
definitely
a fun episode you guys want to tune in on. Sorry.
It was a good one. And he's one of those fellas that's played in a bunch of bands with a bunch of people, and the rock star stories were off the hook. Next week, we're talking to a gentleman named Eric Butow with Jughead's Revenge, and they've been on the punk scene for, well, as long as I've been listening anyway. And we're going to pick his brain over some of the deep geek for sure.
Awesome. Guys, Ian, Mickey, anything you guys got coming up? Are you getting closer to live shows, Mickey, or Ian, any big summer plans now that school's getting out?
Yeah, for me, I mean, we're slowly getting there. So, stay tuned. There'll be news.
Yeah, I mean, if I can shamelessly plug myself, which I hate.
Away. But, you do have some cool news to plug.
Yes.
If you can go get the Creeps magazine featuring a story written by Professor Klink. I had a story published in there. So it's at your local Barnes & Nobles. Please support the great magazine, The Creeps. I was very honored that they printed that. Great company. So enjoy the short story. It's a good one.
And yes. in that story, do you talk about like your love of Eddie and the Cruisers Part 2?
We're not going to get into all that on air. But we do have one more little bit of love in the live chat. Alex Bonafonte says Beverly Hills Carrot Top, LOL. Thank you, Alex. I appreciate you appreciating the humor. And also, I do want to remind everyone that there is a Loki discussion Loki discussion live stream on this very channel every Monday. Be sure to tune in and check that out.
Number one rated show of all time already. The most hits that a premiere show. It's so interesting.
Wow. I'm kind of curious. I'll check it out.
Good.
Also, everybody tune in next Wednesday at 9 p.m. as we put the Predator back on its pedestal as the one, the only, the ugly motherfucker. In the meantime, be sure to like, subscribe, and follow Fandom Spotlight, Punk Rock Geek Den, the Hollow Knight Network, and Pop Culture Punk. Pick up a copy of Creeps Magazine and check out Rick Bart's line on social media. Till then, back up those Betamax, rewind those Laserdiscs, and we'll see you at the movies.